I'm 68 now, and I live alone in a cabin near Mount Baker, about 40 miles from the nearest town. My wife passed in 1982, and I've been here ever since, just me and the Douglas firs. For 40 years, something visited me every Christmas Eve. 3 knocks on the window, always around 9 o'clock. I kept a journal. I took photos of footprints when I could. And last Christmas, it left something on my porch, a backpack I'd seen before, from a hiker who went missing in 1995. Inside was a journal that explained things I'd been too afraid to write down myself. I still have the backpack in my closet. I've never shown it to anyone. It was December 1983, Christmas Eve, and the snow was coming down light and steady. I was alone in the cabin, sitting by the fire with a glass of whiskey, thinking about my wife. The house made those settling sounds old cabins make, and the wind moved through the pines outside like a long, slow breath. I wasn't expecting company. I hadn't had company in over a year. Around 9 o'clock, something tapped the window. Not hard, but deliberate. 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. I set my glass down and looked over. Nothing but darkness and falling snow. I stood up, walked to the window, pressed my face close to the glass. The porch light was on, and I could see maybe 20 feet into the clearing before the trees started. Nothing moved. I told myself it was a branch, maybe ice falling from the roof. But the wind had stopped, and the trees were still. I opened the front door and stepped out onto the porch. The cold hit me hard. I could see my breath. The snow on the porch was undisturbed except for my own tracks from earlier that evening. No branches on the ground, no animal prints, just smooth white snow. I went back inside, locked the door, and sat down by the fire. I didn't finish my whiskey. I just sat there, listening. Around midnight, I finally went to bed, but I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about those 3 knocks. They sounded like someone asking to come in. The next morning, I found a single footprint near the tree line. It was huge, maybe 18 inches long, wider than any boot I'd ever seen. The toes were distinct, 5 of them, splayed out like a hand. I stood there in the snow, looking at it, trying to make sense of it. A bear would leave claw marks. This didn't. I took a photo with my old Polaroid camera, but the print was too far from the cabin to get a clear shot. By noon, fresh snow had covered it completely. The next Christmas, 1984, I told myself I'd forgotten about it. But when Christmas Eve came around, I found myself sitting by the fire at 9 o'clock, waiting. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself it was nothing. At exactly 9 o'clock, I heard it again. Tap, 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 same window, same rhythm. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my flashlight and went straight to the door. I threw it open and swept the beam across the clearing. At the edge of the trees, maybe 30 yards, out something stood. It was tall, taller than any man, broader too. The flashlight beam caught it for just a second before it stepped back into the shadows. I couldn't make out details, but I saw the shape, upright, massive shoulders. And then it was gone, disappearing into the forest without a sound. I stood there on the porch for 5 minutes, shining my light into the trees. Nothing moved. The forest was silent, not even the sound of branches snapping or snow crunching underfoot. Whatever it was, it moved through the woods like smoke. I went back inside and locked the door. My hands were shaking. I sat by the fire until dawn, listening. I didn't hear anything else that night, but I knew what I'd seen. I knew it wasn't a bear. Bears don't stand 8 feet tall. They don't watch you from the tree line, and they don't knock on windows. The next morning, I found tracks. They started at the tree line and came right up to the cabin, stopping just below the window where I'd heard the knocks. Each print was massive, clear in the fresh snow. 5 toes, no claws. A stride longer than any human could manage. I measured one print at 19 inches. I took more photos, better ones this time. The prints led back into the forest, disappearing into a dense thicket of cedar and hemlock. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and I barely spoke to them anyway. I kept the photos in a drawer and tried to forget about it. But every time I looked at the tree line, I wondered if something was out there, watching me. Over the next 5 years, it became a pattern. Every Christmas Eve at 9 o'clock, I'd hear 3 knocks, sometimes at the window, sometimes on the side of the cabin. Once on the door itself, so hard the frame shook. I'd go outside, flashlight in hand, and sometimes I'd see the shape of the tree line. Other times there was nothing but silence and fresh snow. I stopped trying to explain it. I stopped taking photos. I just accepted it. On Christmas Eve, something visited me. That was the routine. I'd hear the knocks, I'd check outside, and by morning there'd be prints in the snow. Big ones, 5 toes, no claws, always leading back into the forest. In 1986, I found something else, a stack of flat stones on my porch, arranged in a neat pyramid. 6 stones, all smooth river rocks I didn't recognize. They weren't from around here. Our rocks are rough, volcanic. These were worn down by water, the kind you'd find in a stream bed miles away. I left them there for a week, and then they were gone. No explanation, just gone. In 1988, I woke up on Christmas morning to find a deer carcass near the tree line. Fresh kill, still warm. The throat torn out cleanly. I thought maybe it was a cougar at first, but there were no cougar tracks. Just those same massive footprints circling the carcass, like something had stood there, watching it. I buried the deer and didn't think about it too much. Nature was brutal out here. Things died all the time. By 1990, I'd gotten used to it. The knocks didn't scare me anymore. They were just part of Christmas. I'd sit by the fire, sip my whiskey, and wait. 9 o'clock would come, and I'd hear the taps. I'd go to the window, look out, and sometimes I'd see the shape in the trees. Sometimes I wouldn't. It didn't matter. I knew it was there. People would ask me if I ever got lonely out here. I'd tell them no. And I meant it. I wasn't alone. Not really. Every year, something came to check on me. I didn't know why. I didn't know what it wanted, but it was there, reliable as the snow. In December 1991, I made a mistake. I mentioned it to a neighbor, not the whole story, just the sounds. I said I'd been hearing strange noises around Christmas, asked if he'd ever noticed anything unusual. He laughed, said something about wildlife, maybe a bear trying to get into my trash. Then he said, "You're not going to start talking about Bigfoot, are you?" The word hung in the air. Bigfoot. I'd never said it out loud before. I'd thought it, sure. Late at night, sitting by the fire, I'd wondered. But hearing someone else say it, that was different. It made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. "No," I said. "Just curious." He clapped me on the shoulder and changed the subject. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Bigfoot. That's what people called it. The creature in the woods. The thing that left footprints and knocked on windows. The thing I'd been living with for 8 years. That Christmas Eve, I sat by the fire, waiting. 9 o'clock came and went. No knocks. I waited until 10. Nothing. I went to bed, confused and a little disappointed. I'd broken something by talking about it. I was sure of it. But at 3 in the morning, I woke up to the sound of footsteps on my porch. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Not running, just walking, slow and steady, back and forth. I lay in bed, frozen, listening. The footsteps stopped at my bedroom window. I heard breathing, deep, slow, like a horse after a long run. And then 3 soft knocks on the glass, right above my head. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling until the footsteps moved away. A few minutes later, I heard branches snapping in the forest. Then silence. The next morning, I found footprints circling the entire cabin. They were everywhere, by the woodpile, near the outhouse, around the porch. Some were so close to the cabin wall that whatever made them must have been pressed right up against the logs. I measured one print at 20 inches, the biggest I'd ever seen. I didn't talk about it again, not to my neighbor, not to anyone. I kept it to myself, locked it away. But the word stayed with me. Bigfoot. It wasn't a joke anymore. It wasn't folklore. It was real. And it had been watching me for years. By 1995, I'd lived with the pattern for 12 years. 3 knocks on Christmas Eve, footprints in the snow, the shape at the tree line. It was as much a part of the holiday as the fire in the hearth and the whiskey in my glass. I wasn't scared anymore. I was curious. That Christmas Eve, I decided to leave something outside. Not food. I'd heard stories about people feeding wild animals and how that never ended well. Instead, I left a small carved figure I'd made from pine. A simple thing, no bigger than my hand, shaped like a bird in flight. I set it on the porch railing and went inside to wait. 9 o'clock came. I heard the knocks, 3 of them, sharp and clear. I went to the window and looked out. The figure was gone, not knocked over, not buried in snow, just gone. And at the tree line, I saw the shape again, taller and broader than before. It stood there, perfectly still, for maybe 30 seconds. Then it turned and walked into the forest. The next morning, I found the carved bird on the windowsill outside my bedroom. It hadn't been there the night before. I was sure of it. Someone had moved it, or something. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. It was undamaged, the wood still smooth and warm from being held. That was the night I heard the growl. It was low and deep, like thunder rolling through the valley. It didn't sound angry. It sounded deliberate, like it was trying to communicate. I stood on the porch, listening, and the growl came again, closer this time. I could feel it in my chest, vibrating through my ribs. I went back inside and locked the door. For the first time in years, I felt afraid. Not because of the sound itself, but because I realized I didn't understand what was happening. I'd been treating this like a curiosity, something interesting to observe. But it wasn't. It was something bigger, something I couldn't explain. That night, I dreamed about the forest. In the dream, I was walking through the trees, following footprints in the snow. The prints led me to a clearing, and in the center of the clearing, something stood waiting. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was watching me. I woke up before I could get close. The next day, I started keeping a journal. I wrote down every detail I could remember, dates, times, sounds, footprints. I didn't know what I was documenting, but I knew it mattered. I knew this was something people needed to hear about, even if I never shared it. Christmas 1996 changed everything. I came back from checking my trapline on December 23rd and found something on my porch. A backpack, old, torn, covered in dirt and dried leaves. I'd never seen it before. I picked it up carefully, half expecting it to fall apart. The zippers still worked. Inside, I found a water bottle, a rain jacket, a compass, and a journal. The journal was water damaged, the pages swollen and stained, but the writing was still legible. The first entry was dated July 1995. The handwriting was neat, careful. The author wrote about hiking the North Cascades, planning to camp near Nooksack Ridge. He mentioned the weather, the trail conditions, the wildlife he'd seen. Normal stuff, but the later entries got strange. August 12, 1995. Something's been following me. I keep hearing branches breaking behind me on the trail. When I stop, it stops. When I move, it moves. August 18, 1995. Found massive footprints near my tent this morning. Too big for a person. Definitely not a bear. I'm heading back to the trailhead tomorrow. August 20th, 1995. I'm lost. The trail markers are gone. I've been walking for 2 days and haven't seen anyone. At night, I hear something moving around my camp. It doesn't come close, just circles. I left food out last night. By morning, it was gone. No animals touched it. just gone. The final entry was dated August 23, 1995. I saw it today, 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair. It stood at the edge of the clearing and watched me. I didn't move. It didn't move. We just looked at each other. Then it turned and walked away. I don't think it wants to hurt me. I think it's protecting me from something else. I heard wolves last night. This morning, there were tracks all around my camp, but not wolf tracks. His tracks, bigger than anything I've ever seen. He's keeping them away. That was the last entry. I sat on my porch, holding the journal, feeling cold. I knew the name. Michael Torres. He'd gone missing in August 1995. There'd been search parties, helicopters, news reports. They found his car at the trailhead, but they never found him. The official report said he'd gotten lost and probably succumbed to exposure. But I knew better now. I looked at the tree line. The sun was setting and the shadows were getting long. Somewhere in those woods, Michael Torres had met something, and that something had been visiting me for 13 years. It had brought me his backpack. It wanted me to know. It wanted me to understand. That night, the knocks came again. 3 of them, soft and deliberate. I didn't go outside. I just sat by the fire, holding the journal, thinking about Michael, thinking about Bigfoot, thinking about all the years I'd spent pretending this was normal. In 1997, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had the journal, I had the footprints, I had 13 years of Christmas Eve visits. The evidence was piling up, and I was running out of ways to explain it away. So I stopped trying. On Christmas Eve, I sat by the fire with a decision made. When the knocks came, I was going to open the door. I was going to face it. I was going to see what it wanted. 9 o'clock arrived. I heard the knocks, tap, 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 on the front window. I stood up, walked to the door, and put my hand on the knob. My heart was pounding. I could hear my own breathing. I turned the knob and pulled the door open. Nothing. The porch was empty. Fresh snow covered everything, smooth and undisturbed. I stepped outside, my boots crunching on the boards. The porch light cast a weak yellow glow across the clearing. I looked toward the tree line. It was there, standing at the edge of the forest, maybe 40 feet away. Tall, impossibly tall. The light didn't reach it, but I could see the shape. Broad shoulders, long arms, a massive head. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I raised my hand. I don't know why. Some instinct told me to acknowledge it, to show I wasn't a threat. The figure shifted slightly, and I saw its head tilt, like it was studying me. We stood like that for what felt like forever. Me on the porch, it at the tree line, just watching each other. Then it raised its hand too, not waving, just lifting it, fingers spread, palm facing me. A mirror of my gesture. And then it turned and walked into the forest. The snow didn't crunch under its feet. It just moved, silent and smooth, disappearing into the darkness. I stood on the porch until my hands went numb. When I finally went back inside, I sat by the fire and tried to process what had just happened. It wasn't an animal. Animals didn't gesture. Animals didn't communicate like that. This was something else, something intelligent. The next morning, I found a gift on the porch, a woven basket, small and crude, made from cedar bark. Inside were 3 smooth river stones, the same kind I'd found years before. I picked up the basket and turned it over. The weaving was tight, skillful. Someone, or something, had made this by hand. I kept the basket. I put it on the mantel, next to the carved bird. 2 gifts from something the world said didn't exist. 2 pieces of evidence I'd never show anyone. That year, I wrote in my journal, I don't know what Bigfoot is. I don't know why it comes here. But I know it's real. And I know it's not dangerous. Whatever it wants, it's not trying to hurt me. It's trying to connect. I believed that. I still do. By 1999, the pattern had been going on for 16 years. But that Christmas, something changed. The knocks came at 9 o'clock, just like always. 3 sharp taps on the window. But when I opened the door and looked outside, there was nothing. No shape at the tree line, no footprints in the snow, just silence. I stood on the porch for 20 minutes, waiting. The forest was dead quiet. No wind, no animals, nothing. It was the kind of silence that makes you uneasy, like the air itself is holding its breath. I went back inside and sat by the fire, confused. For 16 years it had come. For 16 years the pattern had held. And now, nothing. I felt a strange kind of loss, like I'd been stood up by an old friend. Around midnight, I heard something else. Not knocks, not footsteps. A sound I'd never heard before. It started low, almost like a hum, and then rose into something between a howl and a whistle. It echoed through the valley, bouncing off the mountainsides. I'd heard wolves before. I'd heard cougars. This was neither. This was something entirely different. I went to the window and looked out. The forest was still. The sound came again, closer this time. And then I saw movement, not at the tree line, but in the clearing itself. Something, large and dark, moving slowly across the snow. It stopped in the middle of the clearing, maybe 20 feet from the cabin, and turned toward me. I couldn't see details, just the shape, but I knew what it was. I'd known for years. Bigfoot. Standing in my yard on Christmas Eve, making a sound I'd never forget. The sound stopped. The shape stood there for a moment, then turned and walked back toward the forest. It moved with purpose, each step deliberate, like it knew exactly where it was going. I watched until it disappeared into the trees. The next morning, I found footprints crossing the clearing. They led from the forest to the spot where the figure had stood, then back again. Each print was clear and deep, pressed into the snow like a signature. I measured one at 21 inches, the biggest I'd ever seen. That night I wrote in my journal, "It came closer tonight, not to the porch, but into the clearing. It wanted me to see it. It wanted me to know it was real." I think it's been building to this. All these years, it's been getting closer, testing me, seeing if I could be trusted. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire, thinking about Michael Torres and his journal, thinking about the hiker who'd gotten lost in the woods and written that Bigfoot was protecting him. I wondered if that was what was happening here, if this creature had been watching me for years, deciding if I was safe, if I was worthy of what? Contact? Understanding? I didn't have answers, but I knew something was coming. The silence that year felt like a prelude, a calm before something bigger. Christmas 2000 was the night everything changed. I'd been preparing for it all year, though I didn't know what I was preparing for. I just knew the pattern was shifting. The silence in 1999 had felt purposeful, like a pause before a conversation. That Christmas Eve, I didn't wait inside. I sat on the porch at 8:30, bundled in my winter coat, watching the tree line. The temperature was dropping fast, probably below zero, and my breath came out in thick white clouds. The stars were out, bright and cold overhead. At 9 o'clock exactly, I heard it. The sound from the previous year, that low howl whistle that echoed through the valley. It was closer now, coming from the forest directly in front of me. I stood up, my legs stiff from sitting, and walked to the edge of the porch. "I'm here," I said. My voice sounded small in the stillness. The sound came again, and then I saw it. Not just the shape, but the creature itself. It stepped out of the tree line and into the clearing, moving slowly into the moonlight. I'd spent 17 years wondering what Bigfoot looked like. Now I knew. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with broad shoulders and long arms that hung past its knees. Its body was covered in dark, shaggy hair that looked almost black in the moonlight. The face was human. Not entirely, but close enough to make my chest tighten. A broad forehead, deep-set eyes that caught the light, a flat nose, and a wide mouth. It looked at me, and I looked back. We stood there, maybe 30 feet apart, just watching each other. Its eyes were amber, almost golden. They reflected the porch light like a cat's. I could see intelligence in them. Awareness. This wasn't an animal, this was someone. It took a step closer, then another. I didn't move. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst, but I didn't run. I didn't hide. I just stood there, watching this creature approach me. It stopped about 10 feet from the porch, close enough that I could smell it. A musky, earthy smell like wet fur and pine needles. It raised one hand, fingers spread, and held it there. The same gesture from years before. I raised my hand too, matching its movement. We stood like that, hands raised, facing each other across the snow. I felt tears on my face, freezing in the cold. I didn't wipe them away. The creature lowered its hand. It made a sound, not the howl from before, but something softer, almost like a sigh. Then it turned and walked back into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. I stood on the porch until dawn, shaking from cold and adrenaline. When the sun came up, I found footprints leading from the tree line to the spot where it had stood, then back again. The prints were perfect, clear, and deep in the snow. I took photos. I measured them, 22 inches long, 8 inches wide at the ball of the foot. That morning, I wrote in my journal, "Bigfoot is real. I've seen it. I've stood 10 feet from it. And it's not what people think. It's not a monster. It's intelligent. It's aware. And it's been watching me for 17 years." After that night, something shifted between us. The visits became more frequent, not just on Christmas Eve, but throughout the winter. I'd hear the howl whistle in the distance, and I'd know it was nearby. Sometimes I'd find small gifts on the porch, stones arranged in patterns, feathers tied with grass, carved pieces of wood. Once a deer hide, tanned and soft, folded neatly by the door. I started leaving gifts too. Not food, but tools I'd made, carved spoons, woven baskets, small wooden figures. They'd disappear overnight, and a few days later, I'd find something new in their place. It felt like a conversation, slow and wordless, carried out through objects and gestures. In January 2001, I saw it again. I was out splitting wood when I heard movement in the forest. I looked up, and there it was, standing at the tree line, watching me work. I set down my axe and raised my hand. It raised its hand in return. Then it turned and vanished into the trees. This happened more times than I could count. Sometimes I'd see it while checking my traps. Sometimes while gathering firewood. It never came closer than 20 feet, and it never stayed long. But it was there, present, watching over me maybe, or just curious about what I did. In March, I found tracks leading right, up to my window. Not the front window where the knocks had come from, but the side window near my bedroom. The prints circled the cabin, stopping at each window, like it had been looking inside. I should have been scared. Instead, I felt strangely comforted. It wasn't stalking me. It was checking on me. By the time Christmas 2001 rolled around, the ritual had changed. I didn't wait inside anymore. I sat on the porch, bundled in blankets, with a thermos of coffee. At 9 o'clock, I heard the howl whistle. A few minutes later, it appeared at the tree line. It didn't come closer. It just stood there, watching. I raised my hand. It raised its hand. We stayed like that for maybe 5 minutes. Then it turned and left. That became our new pattern. Every Christmas Eve, I'd sit on the porch. It would appear, we'd acknowledge each other, then it would leave. Simple, quiet, perfect. In 2002, I started thinking about Michael Torres again. His journal had said Bigfoot protected him from wolves. I wondered if that was what was happening with me too. If this creature had been watching over me all these years, keeping danger away. I never saw predators near the cabin. No cougar tracks, no wolf packs, just Bigfoot's footprints, circling my property like a guardian. I wrote in my journal, "I think Bigfoot understands loneliness. I think that's why it comes here. Not because I'm special, but because I'm alone. And maybe it's alone too. Maybe in all these mountains, in all these forests, there's only a few of them left. And maybe it just wants to know someone sees it. Someone knows it exists." I believed that. I still do. Christmas 2003 was the last time I saw it clearly. I sat on the porch as usual, waiting. The howl came at 9 o'clock, echoing through the valley. But this time, it walked all the way into the clearing. It stopped maybe 15 feet from the porch, closer than it had ever come before. I stood up, my legs shaky. We looked at each other. Its amber eyes caught the porch light, glowing softly. I could see the details of its face, the weathered skin around its eyes, the gray hairs mixed in with the dark, the way its chest rose and fell with each breath. It looked old, tired maybe. It raised its hand. I raised mine. And then it did something it had never done before. It vocalized, not the howl whistle, but something else. A series of low sounds, almost like words, but not quite, like it was trying to speak in a language it didn't know. I felt tears on my face. "I see you," I said. "I know you're real." It lowered its hand slowly. Then it turned and walked back to the tree line. But before it disappeared, it stopped and looked back at me. Just for a second. And then it was gone. That was the last time I saw Bigfoot standing in my clearing. Christmas 2004 came, and nothing happened. No howl, no footprints, just silence. I sat on the porch until midnight, waiting. The forest stayed quiet. The next morning, I found a single footprint on the porch steps, fresh, pressed deep into the snow, and next to it, a small carved figure, a bird in flight, almost identical to the one I'd made years ago. The carving was rough but deliberate. Someone had tried to copy my work. I picked it up and held it. My hands were shaking. This was goodbye. I knew it. I could feel it. After 21 years, the ritual was ending. I never heard the howl again, never saw the shape at the tree line, never found footprints circling the cabin. It was like the creature had simply vanished, leaving me alone with my memories and a collection of gifts I'd never explain to anyone. Over the next 15 years, I thought about it constantly. I reread Michael Torres's journal. I looked at the photos I'd taken. I measured the footprints I'd preserved in plaster. All the evidence was there, but I never showed it to anyone. I kept it locked away, hidden in a drawer, because I knew what would happen if I did. People would come, hunters, researchers, tourists. They'd tear through these woods looking for proof, looking for glory. And Bigfoot, my Bigfoot, would never be safe again. So I stayed quiet. I protected it the only way I could, by keeping the secret. In 2019, I moved away from the cabin. My health was failing, and I needed to be closer to town. But I kept the cabin. I rented it out sometimes, but never over Christmas. Those nights belonged to something else. Last year, Christmas 2020, I went back to the cabin. I'd been feeling restless, thinking about the old days. My daughter drove me up, said she'd pick me up on the 26th. She asked why I wanted to spend Christmas alone in the woods at my age. I told her I had memories there. She didn't push. Christmas Eve arrived. I sat by the fire, sipping whiskey, thinking about all those years, about the knocks on the window, about the shape at the tree line, about the night in 2000 when I stood 10 feet from Bigfoot and saw its eyes. I wondered if it was still out there, if it remembered me. At 9 o'clock, I heard something on the porch. Not knocks, something being set down gently. I got up, slower than I used to, and opened the door. There, on the porch, was a backpack, old, torn, covered in moss and dirt, the same backpack from 1996, Michael Torres's backpack. But inside, there was a new journal, not Michael's, someone else's. I brought it inside and sat by the fire. The handwriting was different, rougher. The entries started in 1996, right where Michael's had ended. The author didn't give a name, but I knew who it was, or rather, what it was. The entries were simple, observations. Man in cabin alone, wife gone, watching him. Left stones, he kept them. Knocked on window, he came outside. 20 years, still watching. The final entry was dated December 24th, 2020. He came back, last time. Too old now, both of us. Gave him pack, gave him journal, want him to know. Not alone, never alone. Forrest remembers. I sat there, crying like I hadn't cried in years. All those visits, all those footprints. It hadn't been random. Bigfoot had been watching over me, keeping me company, making sure I wasn't alone. For 37 years, I'd had a friend in the forest, a silent guardian, and now it wanted me to know. I never saw it again. I didn't need to. The journal was enough. The backpack was enough. It had given me what I needed, proof that I wasn't crazy, proof that those years meant something. I'm 68 now. I keep the backpack in my closet. I keep both journals hidden away. I've never told anyone the full story until now, because I know what would happen. People would call me crazy. Or worse, they'd believe me and come looking. I can't let that happen. Bigfoot trusted me. It showed itself to me year after year because it knew I wouldn't betray it. I won't start now. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear it. 3 soft knocks, like someone asking permission. I live in town now, miles from the forest, but I still hear it. Maybe it's my imagination, maybe it's memory, or maybe it's real. Maybe Bigfoot is still out there, still watching, still checking on the man who kept it secret. I hope so. I really do.